So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. This is the Wednesday, July 11th, 2018 edition of our little weather get together. This is show number 239, and it's open mic night. That's how Peter phrased it on YouTube. So that's what we're going with tonight. We are happy to have you with us. We were supposed to have Dr. Kreipner, our volcano specialist, and she and we just miscommunicated and we got the wrong time. So she's going to be joining us on July 25th. So that kind of left us tonight with an open table to kind of discuss whatever we want. And definitely has been an active week since we last spoke. We were not here last week because of the 4th of July. And since then, we've had two tropical systems. And we'll bring Shay and Jared in on those and let them give the latest analysis of those. But if you do want to interact with us tonight, you can do that one of many ways. We have Facebook Live going, Periscope. We're also monitoring our YouTube page. So if you have any questions, you can insert them there as well. And we'll get to them tonight. So this show is kind of free flowing. So we'll just kind of bring up some topics, maybe some things that's been going on in the weather industry and things that's been affecting the Southeast. So before we do that, we will go around to our weather roundtable, and we'll bring in let's bring in Eric. Eric's not been with us for the past few weeks. So Eric, how are things there in the Memphis, Tennessee area?
I've been on sabbatical. I've been studying and learning. Actually, no, I really haven't. Not too bad here in Memphis. It's summertime, and so we get the daily pop-up storms and 105 heat index pretty much every day. Is just like a broken record here. But did have a little bit of a break from that last week, but things have kind of gotten back into shape. And the big question around here these days is why the storms keep moving backwards. So I had to do a blog yesterday about high pressure to the north and east to west moving storms. It's just basically like we're sitting on the beach with a trade wind, only we don't have the beach. So that's what's going on around here, Scotty.
Eric, that's the same thing that's going on here in the Carolinas. We've had a lot of our storms moving from east to west as well. And if I'm not mistaken, before we toss over to Jared, you and the family had a little vacation, right?
We did, yes. We went to the cooler climes of Toronto and Niagara Falls. It was 85 to 90 each day. I was really hoping for some cool weather, but it was, back a week and a half ago when the Northeast and the Great Lakes were baking under those record highs. We were there. So didn't get much of a relief, but it was beautiful and we enjoyed it and glad to be back in the saddle though.
Well, I'm sure they were glad for you guys to leave so they could get cooler weather in there.
They definitely were.
All right. Well, speaking of warm weather, let's go down to the Charleston area. And Jared, how are things there in the beautiful city of Charleston, South Carolina?
I thought I'd never say this, but I want Monday back. It was absolutely wonderful on Monday. We topped out about 88, 89. The dew point was in the low 60s. We set several minimum precipitable water values according to SPC climatology. That the air mass that was in place behind Chris was so dry, it felt almost like April or September. It was fantastic. I really, really, really want Monday back because today it was 95 with a heat index of 100, and it's just not going to get any better from there, my friends. We're gonna cool off a little bit. We're gonna get some low pressure is gonna work in and start kicking up our usual afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. So back to that busy time. It was nice to get a break, to put it mildly. But we miss you, Chris. Please come back. We thought it was the best behaved hurricane ever, and then we saw some pictures out of the Outer Banks, which is it's been a bad boy. So we don't like to hear that. We don't like to hear about people dealing with rip currents, and we've had a few issues with that as well. But I've also been playing around with. Let me share my screen a little bit. We can see where old Chris is, and then I think we'll throw it over to Mr. Gibson. And he's got my screen up there. Here's a full disk imagery from Go 16. A little true color action just from the last 12 hours or so. You can see Chris rocketing away, leaving us with just a typical summertime cumulus field. and you can start to see some of that Saharan dust moving in, and Shay is going to have a lot more about that. So,
Jared, I hate to correct you, but I think the official term from the Hurricane Center was skedaddling. It was
yes, that's
out.
right. Yes, it was. It was skedaddling. That's true. I definitely I apologize to everybody. The technical term is skedaddling. So it is. It's getting a move on, as what we say. In formal communication. So.
Yeah, so skedaddling. So before we skedaddle to Shay, let's go to James. And James, how are things there in the Charlotte area?
They're good. You want some trail mix?
If he's not on Grand Theft Auto, he's eating.
That's right. We did a pre-show.
What flavored trail mix do you have tonight?
These are the Target brand peanut butter monster. They're really delicious.
Monster.
Yeah. They're pretty good. That's right. We did a pre-show on my other channel. We played a Grand Theft Auto before their show because we didn't have a guest to prepare for. And we're just hanging out tonight. I was all psyched up, and Scotty said to me at the beginning of the show, "Are we going to roll the open tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, we're going to roll the open, and you're going to see it, and you're going to hear it." And then I hit play, and nothing happened. But there it is. See?
Yeah.
It does exist. So
I made myself look foolish. There,
does
what
exist.
have I-
It just doesn't behave. So, but I'll just repeat what Jared said. The weather's been beautiful. Although I am not going to mutter the words, "I wish it was still Monday," because those are just words you don't mutter. So, I'm done now. Back to
by the
you,
way-
Scotty.
By the way, James has had like 3 cups of coffee
Yep.
tonight. This is why we love caffeinated James. I mean, it's just the best.
Actually, and I also discovered this. I'm using a green cup, and I'm sitting in
Oh.
front of a green screen. That's not a secret, right? It's like, oh, it's disappearing.
Look at that.
Look at that.
That's amazing.
TV magic. I'm done now.
Why do you guys think I drink Pellegrino all the time? It's really fun to watch it just disappear.
Well, I'm drinking orange Kool-Aid tonight, if anybody wants to know. I think
Sure.
another podcast
Sure you are.
does this. The other podcast, the Stormfront Freaks, they talk about what they're drinking all the time. So I'm drinking orange Kool-Aid tonight. James
You know what?
had
I've been
coffee.
listening to a lot of other podcasts on Stitcher because our show's on Stitcher, and I thought I'd check it out. And so I've been listening to like Weather Geeks, and that's a very professional show. But then there are other shows like Giant Bomb where they talk about video games for an hour. Yeah, it's totally just like, yeah, so I did this thing today. Oh, by the way, I put this video game. And then I did this other thing today. And hey, have you tried that new Coke, Pepsi Zero, the thing from the 80s? It's great. We're totally off topic. Why do we be so rigid all the time? I don't know.
We like free-flowing shows. All right, Shay.
This is it.
I know you have honestly prepared for the tropics tonight, so we'll give it to you. We'll let you talk about the tropics.
Okay, well, let's see. We had a little bit of tropical activity going on, and it sort of got everyone's attention for a bit. There's a lot of talk on what kind of brought this on in July. July is typically kind of a quiet month, and yet here we are. We got a Category 2 Hurricane Chris off of the Carolina coast. The good thing is that it did not make landfall, nor did it make any tropical storm force wind landfalls along the coastline either. So the only thing that we've had is some high wave activity. Scotty's got some pictures up in the Outer Banks to share with you. Some rip current forecasting. Obviously got the National Weather Service office is very busy over the last several days, but Chris is on his way out of the picture now, and we're watching another area. So the question is okay, what's with the up spike or the spike in activity across the Northern Atlantic, or the Atlantic, we call it the Atlantic Basin. And we have to attribute some of that to what's called Kelvin waving. And this is just atmospheric dynamics coupled with surface dynamics. And you get an eastward propagating wave of energy that sort of brings more convection over an area and anomalously warmer waters. And then so when you get these two combined, we call that convectively coupled. And so that we sort of had an uptick in that, just an eastward propagating wave that's out of the picture now. So a lot of the activity along the equatorial Atlantic is starting to calm down now. In fact, I'll go ahead and share a screen, see if I can present to everyone, if it will let me. Of course, it didn't let me share. Here we go. Let me share screen first.
I'm glad I'm not the only one with a misbehaving computer tonight.
So I guess if you can see this, okay. Now what we have along we call this the equatorial Atlantic, everything looks pretty dry now. We have a Saharan air layer, which is dust that is suspended at the mid-levels of the atmosphere that's keeping the atmosphere very dry, not a lot of convective activity. This is the water vapor loop showing very little moisture abundance in the atmosphere along this area, where we had Beryl that grew to tropical storm Beryl, and it was briefly hurricane. Then it fizzled out. It came from this area underneath the Saharan air layer. So if we go back to, let me share another screen, see if I can't get this up and running. And when we look at the NASA worldview, we can get a better idea of this. So what happens is, a lot of time in the tropics, this Saharan dust is a lot more present this time of the year, and it sort of starts to relax a little bit, or it actually propagates further north towards the northwestern quadrant of Africa as high pressures to the north sort of subside. And what it is this is low-level jetting at nighttime, kicking up a lot of dust off of the desert. And it gets suspended up at the mid-levels of the atmosphere. We're talking 18,000 feet. And it's just sort of floating along. I mean, the atmosphere carries it all the way across the Atlantic. You can see this giant swath of air getting wrapped into an upper low coming off the coast. And it's just this kind of dry air right here. It reflects the sunlight. It also keeps the air below it a little bit cooler. And so really what it is it's a decoupler for any kind of tropical systems. And in fact, the African dust saves us along the coast many times, or along eastern territories or U.S. interest from getting tropical cyclones developed from this area. And so all this travels towards the west, ends up dispersing over these islands. These islands are used to it. Folks down in southern Florida, even parts of Texas, South America, Latin America, they all get some of the fallout from this dust. And it never gets too bad where people can't breathe or anything. It's just one of these things that happens. And so when we have a giant surge like this, we find a lot less activity coming across the tropical Atlantic. And so we don't expect anything to develop anytime soon over this area. That we call this the intertropical convergence zone, or the equatorial Atlantic, where we find a lot of the activity. The more of the concern is actually here closer over the Bahamas, where this is closer to the United States. And so what we have is we have very warm waters over this area and a little less upper shear. So there's a little bit less upper activity to debilitate systems. This one has a 50% chance. This is actually Beryl. And if we look at it, it really looks like just a disorganized wave is all it is. And we look at the 5-day graphical outlook from 8 p.m. This is fresh off the press. This one looks like it's going to hook out to sea from a cold front coming across the United States. So again, this one's going to follow the footsteps of Chris. So if it does develop, it will get the name Beryl again if it becomes a tropical storm. And then it is expected to stay off the coastline and hook out to sea along a front. So that is what's going on right now. Two systems born a little bit, I wouldn't say early in the month, but Chris, being a hurricane of 90 miles per hour, it was at 105 at one point, making it the strongest storm in July since I think 2010. I'll have to go back and look at Phil Klotzbach's stats on that. But a powerful storm for July indeed. What's really neat is that we got to watch it off of the coastline safely. But we look at the sea surface temperatures, and this is a loop. This goes back from, let me see here, June 22nd through present. And we can see off the coast of Carolina where the storm went, we see the surge in sea surface temperatures going up from southerly winds and warm waters just heading to the north. And then we see at the very end, the last couple frames where the water's starting to cool down. That's where the cool water upwelling is occurring from Hurricane Chris, and it's heading off to the northeast. So nothing is expected to develop off that coast. But with that said, we always have to look towards the, let me share the screen one more time. And I don't want to get too much into this, but we see this frontal activity dropping through Tennessee, parts of the Carolinas right now, even parts of all the way up to the mid-Atlantic. And these are the areas we got to watch. These fronts, these cold fronts, they come down, they stall across the southeast region. We always joke around saying that this is where fronts come to die. Well, this time of the year when you have warm waters off the coast, if you get high pressure building to the north off the Great Lakes over the top of these things, it gives it sort of a top spin. So that's sort of what we're looking at, the possibility with Beryl regenerating into another named storm. And any kind of front like this is a potential candidate for a new tropical cyclone to develop near shore. And we call these homegrown systems. So we have to really watch these for any low pressures that develop along the boundary just off the coast, or even some of the MCVs or storm systems that spin up just inland can actually become a tropical system as they move offshore. over the warmer waters too. So yeah, we got to watch real close to our coastline right now. That's pretty much the gist of it. I mean, we talked about the Saharan air layer helping out disperse some of the systems, but right now, I don't think we have anything to worry about across the intertropical convergence zone, equatorial Atlantic. What we're going to be looking for now is maybe the northeast, the northern Gulf, in those areas where the water is extremely warm, and also just off the southeast coast. So especially North Carolina, where the fronts sort of drop in and they stall, and these little lows come up. And so those are the areas we're going to be watching now, but nothing of any kind of significant threat right now. So right with Scotty, even though Hurricane Chris stayed offshore, we still saw extensive damage to some of the homes up there. If you want to give that a whirl, Scotty.
Yeah, definitely. I'll pull this. Hold on 1 second.
Hello.
There's a severe thunderstorm warning issued. Hold on.
Breaking news.
At first, I thought that was like an old school telephone.
Yeah, no, I was expecting one of those push button, wannabe French phones from the 80s.
I know. Well, he's testing out my like point and click radars here. So
you can't make this stuff up. Everyone there, you see, I have a weather radio, and it goes off when there's a severe thunderstorm warning issued in my area. So
points for being prepared.
Yeah, this one's for Rutherford County. I think I was just looking at radar. There's a hail core of about 1 inch in diameter hail possible. So, but yeah, let's go to Facebook, and this is from Epic Shutter Photography. Let me share the screen right quick. And this was of some of the damage that Hurricane Chris caused in Rodanthe. This is on the Outer Banks, and you can see, as Shay was talking about, it really never made landfall, but we saw the outer effects with a lot of storm surge and some erosion. And so here's some pictures from the Rodanthe area, and as you can see, obviously, when you're at the coast, there's a lot of homes near the ocean, and I'm assuming this was during high tide. These waves came up and created some havoc on these homes, and I guess this is the one downfall, Shay and Jared, I guess you guys know more than anybody else of living around the coast, is even though if the hurricane doesn't really make landfall, your area could still be affected by the effects of a hurricane.
Yeah, Scotty, you're absolutely right. They're actually pretty lucky that they didn't have a landfalling storm, because right now we just went into perigean spring tide phase this week, starting yesterday. And so some folks know that as king tides from the coastal initiative that's going on with mycoast.org. Got to make a mention there because that's a great initiative for coastal resiliency efforts. And this is just another prime example of classic perigean spring tide rise, sea level rise combined with a storm offshore. And this only got to a Category 2 hurricane. It did meander for several days, so it did kick up the swell. But yeah, I mean, you can see how much damage it's doing just without even making landfall.
Yeah, so I know these folks are almost seasoned veterans of tropical systems out on the coast, but you never want to see property affected by these things. So hopefully they can get things repaired and get ready for the rest of the storm season. So. But yeah, Shay, that was interesting. With Chris just kind of sitting there, I know a lot of people were talking about the upwelling and why that wasn't really weakening Chris because of that cooler water being forced up to the surface. But this was kind of over the Gulf Stream as well.
Yeah, that's right. So the Gulf Stream is a constant. The Gulf Stream is what is called a thermohaline current, and it's a surface current, rather shallow, but it's a fresher water body, and it's constantly streaming from south to north. And so it's replenishing that warm to keep Chris from blowing up. Because at one point I did think it might have been a great candidate for rapid intensification. And it certainly looked like it was going to do that yesterday into last night. But once it gets on the move and starts heading to the northeast over slightly cooler waters in time, those storms tend to elongate, become more asymmetrical. And what we're seeing now is Chris racing off to the northeast. So in fact, let's go ahead and take a look at the 2-day, because there is some interest for parts of eastern Canada to be on the lookout. And when we can see out here, here's the future track. Of course, it goes into the North Sea. And you can see right here, just skirting the edge of eastern Canada. So it's some interest there. But the storm itself does not look like it's going to hold up or anything. It usually becomes extra tropical by this point. So as I said the other day or yesterday afternoon, go ahead and fire the flaming Viking arrow into it as it goes away. It's going to race away pretty fast. But Category 2 hurricane in July, and so we've had our first near major, not quite there, very close. I think we were about 6 miles an hour off of having a Category 3. So we'll keep watching.
One thing. I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
No, actually, that was me. I was just look back at Philip Klotzbach's Twitter feed to clarify a couple of those things mentioned earlier. He did say about noon today that this Chris being a Category 2 at 36.4 north was the last time a Category 2 hurricane was that far north in the Atlantic this early in the year was 1906. So obviously one for the records there. And I think it was looks like the lowest Atlantic hurricane pressure this early in the calendar year in 8 years. It's Alex in 2010. So
I think that's what I was reading. I couldn't remember which stat.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's good to know. He's the guy to go to. So if you're ever looking for stats on hurricanes, tropical systems as they're in real time, or just in general, Philip Klotzbach. He's with Colorado State University. Brilliant man. He worked under Dr. William Gray, and swears by his work every day of his life. He's a great individual, and he keeps up with those stats. He's probably the best one to look up if you want to find out more information about what's going on now with storms, how they compare to past storms, and then anything else in the past as well. So, great guy.
Kind of speaking on the tropics, a little controversial topic that popped up over the weekend with Beryl that developed in the Atlantic. One of the major news networks posted a photo on Twitter, a stock photo of a pretty big hurricane, and talked about the possible effects that it could have on Puerto Rico. And I know that was a big topic on Weather Twitter. And I want to pose this question to you guys. Do you feel like that's something we're going to have to deal with this tropical season with those who may not be experienced in the weather world and they want to get that snappy headline? Do you think that they're going to include what happened in Puerto Rico to kind of hype things up this year?
Well, I think you're always looking for a headline and always looking for an angle and a slant. And so, if it's starting off already with Beryl, I certainly can't rule it out. But the truth is Puerto Rico is still really, really hurting. And it's not going to take much. There's the infrastructure is weak, and still being reconstructed. And so I think there's, while it may be an angle or a slant or clickbait or whatever you want to call it, I think there's some partial truth to it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think folks they're going to use Harvey, Maria, Irma, whatever they can to sort of emphasize, get people to look their way. Beryl was a really interesting storm, and there was a cause for some concern from the National Hurricane Center for the Lesser Antilles, specifically in the Dominica and Guadalupe area, because the storm looked like it may actually get bigger, it may intensify. There was a lot of debate on that, and these smaller compact storms that are born out of the ITCZ under dry air sometimes have a knack for weathering some of the dry air and some of the challenges, but just as easily as they can stay spinning and grow in intensity, even this small, reminds me of Danny from 2015, how small the thing was. As fast as they can spin up and as intense as they can get, they can also get ripped apart pretty fast too. It doesn't take very much. They're very small. That dry air, it looked like it just may lift a little further north, but they weren't sure. So they went ahead and issued tropical storm warnings, hurricane watches for the islands. But then, 24, 36 hours out, it started to fall apart. And so they were able to drop all those watches and warnings. By the time it hit the islands, it was a strong wave. They kept the tropical storm watch in effect through the period for Dominica. And they did fine. I was in touch with the majority. They're a media outlet down there, and a guy named Nigel Shamari, good friend of mine down there. He runs the station, and they do a lot of broadcasting across the Caribbean islands. And so, I was able to tell them, look, everything's gonna be fine with this one. It's gonna fall apart. It's gonna be okay. And they ended up being all right because they're still very vulnerable down there from Maria and Irma, and a lot of those islands. they're not ready for it. They're just not ready yet. They just pick themselves up out of the rubble. Things are starting to get built. Power grids are finally back online for some of these places. And, Puerto Rico, I'm not sure. Do we have Doppler radar down there yet? Has that come online?
Yep, it came back about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm seeing it here. So, yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, they're just getting back on their feet. So it was a good dodge on this one.
It is. And it just kind of goes to show you much. I mean, even though these big outlets talk about this, it's always go to a trusted weather source, because when these big outlets get these stories, there's not always meteorologists who are conducting the story. So I know it's open mic night, and I know James just said that we have several questions in our Facebook pages. We did have one question on our YouTube page. This is from DM Clean 02, and he was wanting to know what happened to all the local news station weather radars. It looks like they only use National Weather Service radars now, compared to the early 2000s and 1990s, when every station had their super Doppler whatever. So his question is, what happened to television stations that used to maintain their own radar system, and now they relay to the Weather Service? And James, you out of everybody worked TV out of us, so I'll give that question to you first.
They became too expensive, is my best educated guess. Doppler radars and equipment are expensive to run. TV stations, and I don't want to generalize, but are not the cash cows they necessarily were in the 90s. Best explanation there in the shortest amount of time I can say is thank the internet. And so why run your own Doppler radar when you can just use one the government provides for free? I think there are some good use cases for having your own Doppler radar, especially if you're going to help fill a hole that the government hasn't quite yet filled. But that's my best educated guess, Scotty, is just that it became too expensive. And I think we saw that with several stations who had them. Some equipment failed, and they just never were replaced or fixed.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I know a lot of stations in Charlotte once had their own radar system, and due to one thing or another, just the upkeep was getting to be too costly. And Jared, I think you guys down in the Charleston area, you guys have a few stations that maybe still have the radar or once had the radar.
Yeah, WCSC. I mean, I drive by the tower every day, still see the big dome, but it's not spun for years. There's the old Super Doppler 5000. Talking about Super Dopplers, right? I mean, they were the only one. They were the only station in the Charleston area to run their own radar. Everybody else would run off of the NextRads. We have pretty decent NextRad coverage here in Charleston, in the Charleston DMA. So it's not quite as crucial. I bet they did wish, when we had the great radar outage of 2018 earlier this year, when KCLX was down for 4 weeks, I bet they wish they had that radar back, because that would have been a huge competitive advantage. I think we actually talked about that on the show a little bit. But yeah, I definitely, from what I understand about that, it's cost, it's upkeep, it's all of those factors. Now, it's not everywhere. You see, Oklahoma City, that they are still in escalating Doppler wars. If you look at the OKC television market, for example, you have Next Gen. So with the Barron weather radar that they claim is faster than the Net Weather Service by 10 minutes. That's not really understanding the Weather Service radar technology in the last decade or two. There's you have KFOR with their dual Doppler, and then I believe KOCO has their own as well, or maybe they're just using Fast Track with TLX. But yeah, it's so there are some markets where they still see that as a competitive advantage. But here, the Weather Service radars have gotten really good. And the scan times, it used to be scan times, right? So 60 seconds, you would go around and get a live sweep every 60 seconds. And but now with sales, which is basically the Weather Service radar operator will set the radar to come around every 65 to 75 seconds. They get basically the same coverage that they would have if they were running their own.
Yeah, and Eric, I
Yeah.
think you had a comment.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go back and echo what Jared just said because those were basically my same points. Here in Memphis, we've got the 3 network stations that all have their own. One of them has been upgraded recently, but like you said, I think the besides the cost factor, the availability of the data from the National Weather Service and the fact that they have higher scan rates, and a lot of the dual pole stuff. I know TV stations generally don't use that dual pole information, but the vendors are making all of that available as well, and so you can get a lot of the same information from the Weather Service radars that you can get from having your own at this point, unless you've got a network outage or something. Of course, the radar goes down, but generally they do their best to try and time that at periods where the weather's not active anyway. So, just my comment.
And then
Also,
Eric.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, Eric, you live in Memphis. I'm not far from Charlotte. The Weather Service and TV stations can also use the terminal Dopplers that are at select airports throughout the country, and that also can kind of give a more local scale than per se Charlotte, 85 miles from Greenville. It kind of gives that more local scan.
Exactly. Yep.
And then there's also sales that's available on some of these WSR, we call them WSR 88D, 1988 generation satellites. And so there's also a little bit of talk. I think I'm not sure if this is a huge weighing factor, but there's a lot of talk about the next generation of satellite. I'm sorry, radar. We obviously satellite GOES is already out. The next generation radar, which is going to be the phased array generation, possibly being introduced in 2019, 2020. So that's another reason why they may hold back and say, we don't want to stick with this old technology. We might wait for them to do it. So I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the from what I've heard through conferences and so forth, is phased array is actually probably 2030-ish before it actually gets out to replace most of the 88Ds. But all of the 88Ds are going through a refurbishment process right now to extend their life, basically extend the shelf life and replace the parts that wear and so forth. And each of the radars has a downtime, of a couple of weeks to be able to do that. But, I believe that the goal for that is to try and extend their life, another decade or so to get them to where the phased array will be ready to start deploying. So it's going to be a while, I think, before we see that.
And Jared, you made the point, the Oklahoma City market, the Tulsa market, out there, they have a lot of research with OU. I wonder in the next 5 years or so if we'll see one of those TV stations get a Doppler on wheels.
It wouldn't shock. I mean, there's TV stations that already have that. Or, they have these. I believe they have some of the NBC O&Os, if I'm not mistaken, have some of the have these Storm Ranger S-band portable radars. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I hallucinated this, but I want to say that there are some TV stations.
Yeah, you're right. Dan just put it in our Facebook chat. Dan watched it on
Dan
Facebook.
Andrews just posted about it from Washington Post. Let me pull it up on screen here.
Yeah. Quickly going back to the 88Ds or the Service Life Extension Project too, another thing that they're adding now is, in addition to sales, which is just one low-level cut, now they're going to do something called MRLE. It's not a meal that's ready later to eat. It's basically additional sales scans, but higher up in the atmosphere. So where we get the temporal resolution of the low-level scan, now we're going to get that temporal resolution for the 4 split cuts. Additional on top of those. So that's kind of interesting.
That is. Well, James, I know you've been monitoring the Facebook Live, but I know you have baby Theo, so you have some questions.
Baby Theo's taking a Walker Gouda bottle.
Oh, how's it going?
It's open mic night, open family night. Bring the kids to work. Yeah, we have been watching the comments, and Dan was chiming in on this conversation. Do appreciate that. Don't mind the side of my head here while I look over to the left to just scroll through this. We got a lot of conversation going tonight, guys, and we really do appreciate that conversation. I see Meredith in here and Dan, and we did have some other ones as I scroll back up. So
we did have one from Dane Clement asking how many will come off of Africa. And I went ahead and pulled up some, see if I can figure out how to get this up. Okay, so going back to the NOAA seasonal outlook for the hurricane season, they're calling for near normal for the most part. 10 to 16 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, 1 to 4 major. The updated one from Colorado State University, this is one that Phil Klotzbach I spoke of earlier helped work on. And this is on the Weather Channel, but this is reflecting the CSU forecast. And they're pretty much close to that. 10 to 16, 5 to 9 hurricanes, 1 to 4 category 3 or higher. How many of those come off of Africa has yet to be determined. It just depends on when the African dust settles or when there's a least amount of surge of that dust over the ITCZ or the Intertropical Convergence Zone, and then how much activity is actually ongoing. So some of the numbers were actually lowered where we think it might be a little bit weaker season because El Nino is forecast to develop this summer, possibly. And also, we're not on the La Nina anymore. We're actually on El Nino watch. So when we have an El Nino in the Pacific, that tends to weaken the activity in the Atlantic. And so we're kind of teeter-tottering right there on that. So we have that to consider. And then also the tropical Atlantic waters are cooler than normal right now. And typically they're at a temperature where it's very conducive for development, at least from the surface waters. Now, you also have to think about the upper atmosphere. Is there a lot of shear loft? Is there cooperation on all levels for a system to develop? So coming off of Africa, it takes a lot actually for a storm to really hold and develop and then strengthen as it slowly heads to the west northwest. They usually encounter quite a few hurdles. So that has yet to be determined. I mean, I stay in line with 10 to 14 storms. I couldn't even throw a number on how many would come off of Africa. We're going to see a lot of waves coming off of Africa, but the absolute number is going to be hard to say. I mean, I would stick with the 10 to 14 and 10 to 16 named storms for the year. And the next one is going to be Debbie, because we've already had Chris, and then Ernesto after that. So we'll see how it goes as it progresses. We're going to see things pick up a little bit next month, maybe even at the end of this month. This depends on a few things, a few factors, and then of course our busiest time of the season is September. So we're still a couple months out from that.
So Eric, I know you were doing some decision support with the 4th of July activities. How did that go there in the Memphis area?
Actually, that was when I was out of town, so I was not doing decision support for July 4th, although sometimes I do. But there was several discussions that came up, especially on a social science Facebook group that I'm a part of that talks about weather and decision support and social science. And I'll share my screen and let you kind of take a look here at the issue at hand, kind of provide you a little bit of background as to what was going on. So several places had lightning going on during their July 4th activities. And this one was actually fairly close to home here. This was a picture that was taken about an hour and a half east of here on Pickwick Lake, which is kind of a recreational area, but there's a lot of folks that have second homes or kind of cabins and stuff out on this lake. And obviously the picture is beautiful. It's showing the fireworks going off, the lightning in the background, but the beauty of it was kind of secondary to me to what I kind of made out of this as well, and that is the coexistence of those two phenomena. And what really made it even more I guess sad in my thought was that this right before these fireworks went off, there was actually a fatality due to a severe thunderstorm at that lake, where a tree from a severe thunderstorm fell on a car, damaged the car horribly, and the occupant of the vehicle was killed. And they, from word that I had kind of received secondhand, and then also some direct knowledge after the fact, they basically had more thunderstorms that were coming in later on, and so they kind of squeezed the fireworks in between the storms, and you can see the second storm there in the background starting to make its way in. A little more context here: David Drobny taking the proper action. So, what are you guys' thoughts on seeing this and knowing what went on and how we as a weather community should be responding to this sort of thing?
That's a good question. Obviously with lightning, when we do our work at the Speedway, we have set parameters, and once it's within that parameter, even if the storm's moving away, we've halted activity. Most of the time it's between 8 and 10 miles. And even if that storm's moving away, if it's within that perimeter, we're halting activities. It's tough because I know those organizers and those events, those sports teams and stuff, they've put so much time and effort and funds into that you want to have it at that time, but ultimately, what do you want to have more? Do you want to have a safe event or an unsafe event? I recall back in May during Speed Weeks at Charlotte Motor Speedway, we had a concert and put on by a country artist, and one of the restaurants was doing a fashion show, and we had lightning within 6 miles, and we just told those organizers, like, we know you don't want to do this, but we've got to stop because we have 15,000 people here for this concert, and their safety is our number one priority. So it's just, where's that line that you draw, and what's the repercussions of maybe delaying something or pushing it back a day or something. It's a tough call, but with us in the weather community, we know about lightning, and our job and our what we're supposed to do is keep folks safe, and that's, as a consultant, you can only give the information that you have. It's still up to, I guess, the organizers to act on that. Does that make sense? I'm sure you have the same thing, Eric, when you're doing your consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when there's somebody there that is kind of in charge of providing that information and doesn't have to worry about some of the ancillary things that are going on around you, like a lot of times when you've got you've got maybe a county EMA who is not only just doing the weather, but also has to deal with the ramifications of all of that. You can't possibly do it all at the same time, and so it's obviously beneficial to have somebody there that's their job, is to watch the weather and tap somebody on the shoulder or grab them by the shirt collar if you need to, if there's something else going on, and saying, hey, look, we've got this going on. And I don't know necessarily, lightning at night obviously can be seen from a very long distance. In that case, it didn't look real far away, but I'm not saying that what they did specifically was unsafe at that time. But, my thought goes back to, we just had this event occur and cause this to happen. It's fresh in my mind. Are we making the right decision to go ahead and go on with this when we know there's another threat that's just down the road? And I'm not questioning anybody's decision making that night. I was not there. I didn't, I don't know exactly what happened. But the picture that it portrays is kind of difficult. So.
Yeah, Shay, I'm glad you pulled that up, because I had that email put up. Since our last show on June 27th, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've had 6 lightning deaths occur. A couple in Florida, one in Georgia, one in Missouri, one in Arkansas, one in Tennessee. So, we're up to 13 now. Is that right? Yeah, 13 lightning deaths so far. And we get these emails from John Jensenius, who's been a guest on our show for the past couple of years. And he put in his last email that we are reaching the peak season. From now through mid to late August is when everyone is outdoors, and it's the time that we see lightning deaths really increase. So that's something to watch. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but Eric, while you were talking about this, and Jared and Shay, you guys can chime in. Eric, I know you as well, because all of us, even where James is at, we all have baseball stadiums in our cities that we live in. And so I had this foul ball on my desk, and it reminded me, we had an event a couple of days before the 4th of July, minor league baseball. They have folks in from everywhere to watch fireworks and to watch games. And I literally I'm doing weather for our minor league team, and I can only tell them what's going on. Once play is started, it's in the umpire's hands. And the umpires are the ones that cancel the game or postpone it or suspend it or whatever. We had lightning 2 miles from the stadium, and they were still playing because the umpires deemed it to be safe. And unfortunately, I think between Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, it's going to take a lightning death before that control is transferred to someone else who has better resources to look at what's going on. Do you guys have anything to kind of chime in on that?
Well, just that we always remember that, lightning can strike 30 miles away from a storm. We had that here in Charleston, where a lightning bolt, we estimated somewhere around 15 miles away, hit the beach. It was a radial pattern. There was lightning strikes away from this one storm one day. It was really odd. It was just this one storm firing lightning off in different directions all around. And it took a lot of people by surprise. In fact, we had someone struck over the weekend. We had 3 people with one bolt of lightning on the beach. One person was in the water. They were doing CPR. I don't know if that person, I've been hearing that person is still in critical condition. Another man injured, a kid was injured as well. And it's from one bolt, just from being out on the beach during thunderstorm activity. It's the bolt out of the blue. You can be out there on a day and sky's blue overhead. You don't even hear thunder, and lightning crashes right over you. And so, lightning safety is huge this time of the year. And John Jensenius, he keeps, up with the lightning fatalities. And, last year was an all-time low. It was good. I think people are starting to pay more attention. But when you start to have these events and these things, people are kind of pushing the envelope with it. It's not, I don't think, the smartest decision. I know there's a lot of money riding on it. So there's an argumentative point there that there's, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars riding on a 15-minute window to try to get some fireworks up in the air and make everybody happy that have taken all the time off. There's no such thing as 5th of July fireworks. And that's hard to sort of organize that unless there's extreme. I think towns could do it. It's a tough topic to try to, it costs a lot of money to sort of push an event back, but at the same time, the safety aspect has to come first.
Yeah, it's a real gamble if you don't, right? I mean, okay. It
only takes one person.
Right. One person for, tremendous bad publicity. And, we had a situation, Scotty brings up the baseball stadium. We had a few weeks ago, we had thunderstorms nearby the River Dog Stadium. In fact, I think I used that as a tweet of the week, where he had a beautiful lightning bolt, beautiful lightning bolts in the distance. And it was a great shot. It was a great picture, but those people should not have been in the stands. Because there was a lightning strike, a mile away from the stadium. It's a miracle that no one was hurt. It's just, and that was at a stratiform rain too. Keep in mind, there's a reason why they say 30 minutes after the last rumble, because that was coming out of, the stratiform rain after it feels like, okay, the storm has calmed down. And then all of a sudden we got these two lightning strikes that were just, it created this thunder that just absolutely jolted everybody downtown. I was downtown that evening, and it was very loud. It sounded like a bomb went off, and it was very close. And that was well after, the bulk of the rain had moved through. It was just kind of like drizzling at that point, just a little, just the cloud precipitating out. So yeah, we've got to be, we hate to hear about these, lightning injuries and fatalities, and, we really need people to understand that, you hate to be cliche here, but when thunder roars, go indoors, guys.
Yeah, they just came out with a new jingle for that too. That was not badly done. Not badly done. One more. We got another viewer question, and it is. Let me go and look real quick. Stephen Lynn. It's from the Florida Panhandle. He's asking, do you think that August and September will be busy for the hurricane season? And so I'm going to put this up on screen so you can see it. And this is sort of your timeline for hurricane activity, historically speaking, from the time we've been recording storms, or the time that science and meteorology has been recording storms. And we see things start to pick up in August. So yes, we'll definitely see some additional activity in August. We peak on September the 10th. That's the date where after that things start to sort of calm down, but you can see the buildup from August into the first week or two of September being the peak there. So of course, yes, going by this graph and going by history, absolutely, I would say August and September are probably going to be our busier months. And again, we have to watch the tropical Atlantic across the equator, and then even closer to home for homegrown systems to maybe be the players this year. So we'll have to watch and see. But that timeline right there gives you an idea of what to expect on an annual basis. And let's see, back to Jared. I think you wanted to give a shout out to a couple of initiatives going on.
Yeah, I know we're getting close to the end here. Just a couple things, and maybe we go into tweets with this. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
Yeah, if you guys have got tweets, because the first one is a tweet. Actually, there's a couple tweets, so I'm going to kind of cheat with the tweet of the week, and we're just going to do 2 tweets of the week for me. So I'm just going to cheat here. Let me pull this up. So first shout out, mention goes out to at CFCWX on Twitter. So the College of Charleston Meteorology Program has had their Twitter account approved. Friend of the show, Trevor Gibbs, was instrumental in helping get this started, and so we're the only meteorology program. College of Charleston Meteorology Program is the only program of its kind in South Carolina. So please do give them a follow. It's really exciting to see the caliber of people that have been there. That are there. Shay and I went to a symposium there a couple months ago now. God, was it like 3 months ago now? I mean, time flies, and there was a lot of interest with Dr. Marshall Shepard, and there was a lot of interest there, and it was a really good talk. And so it's really fantastic to see this program continuing to grow, and we hope that we hope that they can continue to attract a lot of good talent. I mean, I'm tempted to audit a few classes myself, so because it just sounds like fun. So there's that. And then the school, so keeping with my alma mater here, let's see here. You know what? I'm going to skip that, but I will say this. Let me unshare my screen real quick. Save the date for the software engineers that are watching this program, the 24th, 25th, 26th. The Charleston Floods Hack will be going on. It's a project of the South Carolina Sea Grant and Department of Homeland Security to build tools to help increase preparedness and awareness of coastal flooding. Shay mentioned my coast earlier, and this is kind of a similar initiative there. So, but something that's maybe consumer focused, maybe API focused, hard to say. We want to see what you bring to the table. So, so start marking those down, 24th through the 26th. In Charleston, it's going to be a good time. And I'm personally really excited to see what people are going to come up with. So, Scotty, back to you, man.
All right, thank you for that, Jared. I'm going to share my tweet of the week, and is it okay if I share my own tweet? Is there any rules against that?
No, I think we do it a lot.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a while, Scotty. So go ahead and pat yourself on the back first.
All right, here. Well, this picture is not from me. This is from Candy Mashburn. This was last Friday. That cold front that ushered in the cooler temperatures over the weekend fired up some severe weather in western North Carolina, and this was taken in the George Hildebrand community. This is Shady Grove Baptist Church. A severe damaging wind gust came through, and as you can see, it knocked the brick church sign down. It also blew off the siding off of one of the sides of the church there. So that was some pretty powerful winds that moved through the George Hildebrand community. So that's my tweet of the week. Props to Candy Mashburn for sending in those pictures.
I've got my tweet of the week pulled up here, and like Scotty, it is my own tweet, but it comes from our own Carolina Weather Group stream. I think this was Friday. We had those flash floods come through the Charlotte area, and so we had the cameras streaming for you on our live platforms from USGS, and someone violated the cardinal rule of turn around, don't drown. You can hopefully see them there. I photoshopped an arrow in with the word wrong. You don't know how swift those waters are or how deep it is or whether or not there's even a road underneath. So please, folks, don't drive across flooded roadways, especially when we can see you.
Man, and that system in Charlotte, that just blew up. That was a lot of heavy rain in a short amount of time there. And James, as you know, most of Charlotte's concrete and pavement anyway, so...
Yeah, that's why it's really nice that the USGS has those cameras scattered across town, and you can see we had 2 of them streaming, because not only does it give us a bird eyes view, an eyewitness view to what's happening, especially along those waterways here in Charlotte. We have so many creeks, but it gives the National Weather Service a view too. So they're in Greenville, Spartanburg, and it gives them kind of an eye on what's happening.
Definitely so. All right, Shay, I see you have yours pulled up. Go ahead.
Yep, I chose Facebook because the Twitter video is not quite as big. This is Reed Timmer with a Haboob. This is out in Yuma, Arizona, and this is also known as a dust storm or sandstorm. This is a big one. They've had a couple of days lately going on. This is the time of the year where we start to see a little bit more of the storm activity over the deserts. And so when you have collapsing storms, they release this giant microburst, which stirs up these giant sandstorms, and they're called Haboobs originally. So I'll go ahead and push play, and you can sort of see. I know the video output through isn't quite as smooth, but if you go to Reed Timmer's page on Facebook, Reed Timmer, extreme meteorologist, right there, bottom left corner, you can see this really impressive feature. It looks like something out of a movie, but it really is just a dust storm or a sandstorm. It does kick up a lot of activity, and folks do need to go inside and get out of it. They end up having to pull over off the side of the road, but you can see how impressively large this is. I always argue that these sandstorms, if you were to kind of take a coastal sea breeze, some of the same properties, if you could put dye in the air for a sea breeze, it might look something like this. Of course, it doesn't move as fast as a sandstorm, but yeah, some of the same properties. But anyways, yeah, check it out. It's a really, really neat video. This one, it's not very long. I think about 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half long.
Can I
get some really, really impressive?
I'm sorry, Shay. I didn't mean to step on you. I was trying not to be rude, but with the delay, I kept doing it. So I'm sorry. I was going to show the same thing from another angle because I had another really cool angle of this Haboob I wanted to show, and I was trying to do it politely, and I totally stepped on you. I did not mean to do that. This is from the Fox station out there. Flash Player is required to view this video. My computer is just not cooperating tonight. Hang on. I got this. They took their helicopter and they flew up and down the Haboob.
James, do you remember us categorizing those warnings and advisories and stuff on your platform for work? And we talked about these dust storm warnings. This is where that would come in.
Yes. Here it is.
That's pretty cool.
Oh.
Shay, I thought you would like that, which is why I was trying to get it to play. I'm sorry, my friend.
No, it's cool. Yeah, I did see that one earlier too. It was moving so fast. And that's like super speed, but that's cool because you get a different perspective on its motion. Really, really cool how it advances that way.
I know it's very flat out there, but I kept thinking, and maybe Eric can chime in on this, that helicopter seems too close.
That it is pretty close, but I think when you put it at normal speed, it's probably not much different than they do in Oklahoma going around the tornadoes that are spinning out there. I'd rather be in front of a Haboob.
Yeah,
that's
Eric,
a whole nother topic.
How do you put that into a TAF forecast for the day?
You do lowered visibility and blowing dust and wind. Is that actually how you do that?
You don't have to worry.
do it.
Let's say, how often do you have to worry about that, Eric, in Memphis? I mean, you guys are a little bit flatter than us here in the Carolinas.
No, but for Phoenix, Tucson, yeah, those would be the main two places. Maybe Vegas every once in a while. They get those, but yeah, there was I think I saw 60 to 80 mile an hour winds out of that one as it went down towards southwest Arizona. Was that one last night or the night before? Severe thunderstorm warning with the blowing dust, and what a mess. Okay, so moving on, and I think that you guys just made up that term because you were trying to get ratings on the show too. So I know that was, wow, that's a brand new term. We've never heard that before. So, all right. So here's mine. We'll end on a very pleasant note tonight. This is from one of our local broadcasters here in the Memphis area, Joyce Peterson. Always takes great photos and is hardest working gal in the news world here in Memphis, I think. And if you want to go back to Monday, this was the end of Monday for us. And if I got to look forward to this every night on a Monday, I might take a few more Mondays as well. So just a beautiful shot looking down towards the Mississippi River. That's actually a harbor. That is not the width of the river. The river's on the other side of the island that's out there in the middle, but that's what we call Mud Island. There's an amphitheater over there, and the bridge going over the Mississippi is carrying Interstate 40 across Memphis to Arkansas. So beautiful shot looking from the bluffs here in Memphis out across the river.
Well, on this show tonight, we've talked about tropics and lightning safety and how everybody loves
Scotty's
Monday.
muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you, Scotty. Okay. I think Eric may just...
Scotty's still muted, I think.
Oh, Eric can't hear me.
Oh, we could say things about Eric now?
I don't think Eric can hear us. Can you hear us, Eric?
What are things we wanted to say about Eric this whole time but couldn't do it because he could hear us?
Memphis, we have a problem.
Oh my.
I think that's just another sign that we are done with our open mic night.
Yeah. Eric's
I
mic is.
want to share one more thing about Haboobs. Haboobs. All right. So I've got another tweet. I'm gonna do a hat trick here. All right. So our friend William Churchill, with a very rare radar post, I had to double check to see that this was him. It wasn't Ghost 16. So this is a loop from Apology DuPage of reflectivity and correlation coefficient of the Haboob as it moved through. So that Haboob looked like a big microburst, but then you put on the correlation coefficient, you can see very low values of CC, and so that's so it was picked up all over the place. You know, Storm Chaser's radar. I'm sure you could see it on the satellite as well. Pretty cool.
And I don't know.
Consider that maybe a dry macroburst. Dry macroburst. You ever heard of that before?
Yeah, I mean, nothing shocks me these days. So,
Eric, if you can hear us, can you hear us now?
I can, yes.
And we can hear you.
He's gonna call it a rain bomb that caused it.
It was a dry rain bomb.
It was a dry rain bomb. It was a Virga bomb. That's what it was.
I was gonna say, you mentioned our friend Churchill. William, he's been on our show before, and I believe he just got a promotion to the Florida Keys. Am I not right?
Yes,
I mean, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's crazy. Especially with his wife still working on a PhD up in the Northeast. He's moving farther away from her. So,
wow.
And we've had Taylor Trogdon on before also. He was a Memphis Weather Service alum that was with the Storm Surge unit. We had him on in the fall, and I see he is now with UCAR, I think, down there in Miami. So folks moving all over the place. I didn't know UCAR had meteorologists in Miami.
I didn't either. That's interesting. All right, well, we'll end our show tonight. I can't believe we actually went an hour without a guest tonight. That's we didn't know in our little pre-chat. We didn't know if we could make it an hour. So, but we did. So that's pretty cool. But everyone, thanks for watching. Just kind of give you a brief update on what's going on with our upcoming shows. I'm actually going to show you our schedule because we need your help. Here's what it looks like for the next through October 24th. Do you see all these yellow boxes? We need your suggestions. Those yellow boxes are open weeks, and we would love to know what you would like for us to talk about. Maybe some potential guests that you would like for us to have on the show. So send those requests to us, and myself or Eric or Shay or Jared or James, we can reach out to those folks and see if we can get them on our show. But again, next week we have Roger Edwards on from the Storm Prediction Center. He's going to be talking about tropical tornadoes. On the 25th of July, our Dr. Kreipner is going to be back talking about volcanoes. And then Ashley's scheduled a show about volunteers and flood events, how to manage all of that. Deratios, MCSs, and MCVs. What does all that mean? We know that those are popular terms in the summertime. We're going to have Russ Shoemaker on from Colorado State to talk about that. So those are a few of our shows coming up. But again, all those yellow highlighted areas, and if you're listening on our podcast, we have about 6 or 7 of the dates that are not filled yet. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to send them our way, and we will do our best to reach out to them. So for everyone, thanks for watching us here on the Carolina Weather Group. We hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of our little weather get-together. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.